Streetscape project. My name is Bill Roth. I'm the planning director with the city, and this is a planning and engineering project. And we're really excited about this Streetscape project and the things that we can do with it. We've hired a wonderful design team, Phil Viveris with McMahon Associates. He can introduce the other folks. I'm going to let Phil go ahead and kind of lead the meeting and start everything. Some of it's going to be interactive, and Phil can explain to you. The aerials show you, set the stage. On the tables are the surveys that kind of show the existing conditions, and then everything on the side are templates of things that you might want to see. So I'll let Phil go ahead and talk about the project and introduce the team.
Great, thank you, Bill. So again, my name is Phil Viveris. I'm with McMahon Associates. We're the consulting firm that the city has hired to initiate this streetscape design for Bedford Street. With me tonight are Paul Vegas in the back from my office at McMahon. He'll be the highway design lead, and then we have Mike Various from LDD Collaborative, which is a local landscape architecture firm here in Fall River that we collaborated with to design some of the streetscape elements for this project. So around you see different aerial photos. They're all the same photo, and it's just basically just to give you a sense of where we're looking at here for the project, where the limits are. So basically it's Bedford Street from Robeson and 13th Street, that crazy signal over there that I'm sure you've all encountered, moving west towards downtown and ending at North and South Main Streets. So those intersections are the project limits of our project. Obviously those two are signalized intersections. There are two other signals at Troy and High Street and Rock and 3rd Street that are part of the project as well. It's about a half-mile corridor. As you know, it's 2 lanes of traffic, one way again going towards downtown, with a lane of parking currently, sidewalks on both sides, and serving a mix of primarily commercial uses, tending toward almost industrial uses on the east side of the corridor, with very few residential uses right on Bedford Street. If you go a block north, you definitely get into more residential areas, Main Street, that area. As you move closer to the west, toward where we are, becomes more retail service type industry, post office, law offices, obviously where we are today, concentrated in this part of the corridor. So there are also 4 bus stops that serve this corridor. 3 of them are concentrated pretty well to the east between 12th Street and 8th Street, mostly serving some of the outbound routes from the SRTA terminal. There's another bus stop at the corner of North Main Street, right at that intersection there, serving 3 other different routes. So transit is obviously going to be an important element as well. And the key goal for this project is to really make Bedford Street a gateway into the downtown. It functions that way right now, indeed, in terms of the traffic and everyone sort of channeling towards the downtown, but we want to make it look like a gateway. An area that people, when they come into Bedford Street, whether they're in their car, riding a bike, walking, using transit, are able to know that they're coming into the core central part of the city. And there are a number of ways and design elements that we can introduce here that might allow that to happen. And that's really what we're here to talk about today. We've really gotten started with the very beginning stages of the project. We just got surveyed a couple of weeks ago, as Bill mentioned. We have some survey plans that we'll talk through for one of the exercises that we'll do tonight. We're getting traffic counts in the 2nd week of September, I believe, right after Labor Day, when schools are back in session, to get a sense of baseline traffic conditions. Another early task that we're going to consider here is doing a road safety audit of the corridor. There are a number of high crash locations along this corridor that Mass DOT has identified. We're hoping that we can not only have that audit inform some of the design elements to make the roadway and the corridor safer, but there may be opportunities to leverage some state funding as a result of that. So those are some of the early tasks that we're looking at doing here. But again, we don't have no concepts, we have no preconceived ideas of what we're looking at here, and that's really why we wanted to have this meeting and have your input here. So the way we're looking to do that is, rather than have us talk to you in an audience format, is to do a couple of different exercises that are a little more interactive, and hopefully will encourage some good dialogue between you, the public, and the design team. So the first exercise we'd like to have you do is break up into smaller groups, huddle around these survey plans, and basically ask yourselves and let us know what areas here work well. Are there parts of the street here that function well? Are there areas that don't function well? And how would it function better if you were living on the street, if you were a business owner, if you were a visitor, if you had a wheelchair, if you had an elderly person here live? Try to think of it from different perspectives of what works well and what doesn't work well. And we have pens and markers and notepads here to give you feedback right on these plans. We're going to take these plans, mark up as much or as little as you want. We'll take that information back and we're going to incorporate that into the design. After we do that for a period of time, the second exercise that we'd like to try and have you engage with us tonight is, you'll see around the room here there are a number of different boards with some different pictures of various features that a typical streetscape or a complete street might have. And when we say complete street, we're talking about a street that really de-emphasizes the focus on motor vehicles and serves all different kinds of users. Again, if you're a pedestrian, if you're a bicyclist, if you're a transit rider, we want to have each of those user groups feel like the street works for them. So around the different boards, there's some different sort of generic and standard elements, and we'll give you colored dots, stickers, and essentially vote on what elements you think might work well here on Bedford Street, what maybe we should not consider, and just kind of consider what the street could be. And once we get that feedback, we'll look at what you've said to us. We'll look at the survey, and as we dive deeper into the design, try to incorporate as many of those elements as possible. So, any initial questions before we start? Yep.
Bedford Street, has a one-way. Would you be thinking about making it a two-way?
It's something that we've been asked to consider by the city, so that's an option to consider. What would happen if we make it two-way is something that we'll look at. But again, we have no traffic information at this time just for what the baseline is, so that'll be something that as we collect that information and start to look at it a little bit more closely, that'll be one of the things that we will likely look at and see how it works.
It's difficult coming from one end to the other end. When it's a one-way like that, if you have to go all the way around the city, just to get to Pleasant Street. So I'm thinking like two-way would be good.
Right. And part of what we'll look at is balancing again the challenge, the user needs in terms of different uses versus if we were to consider other elements, wider sidewalks or different changes to the actual street, how feasible that would be. And again, we're in a very early stage where we're trying to get a lot of that information in. So what I'm going to have you all do is we have Paul and Mike in the back and myself here. Pick a table, try to divide up into smaller groups. Again, we have an existing conditions plan of Bedford Street here, and we'd just like you to come up and take a look and start giving us just the feedback like you've given us here, and have us tell us what you think. That's what we're here for tonight. So.
And also, there is a sign-in sheet. If you haven't signed in, at some point, it's over on the back table.
Yep.
Just sign in so we know who's here. We want to document, what we're doing and to move forward. Thank you.
And I should have neglected to acknowledge Councilors Stephen Camara and Leo Pelletier that are here as well. So we appreciate your attendance and your input here as well. So thank you.